Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and I'm here today to help you become a better Junkrat player. That's right, we're talking about Junkrat, the crazy, one-legged, explosion-addicted maniac with the grenade launcher. Yeah, that guy. He's an amazing support and crowd control character. He's great for new players, and once you master him, he can be a seriously beneficial addition to your team. So the first place that we need to start is where Junkrat fits in terms of his role on the battlefield. As I said, he is a defense and, in my opinion, crowd control type hero. Now, Blizzard defines him as a defensive hero. So when you're actually building your team composition and they're asking, hey, we need more defensive heroes, well, they're talking about someone like Junkrat. What that means is that he's really effective in defense type situations. It doesn't mean that you can't use him in the attacking round of a game mode like Assault. That's perfectly reasonable. It just means that he's better in defense type scenarios. And in my opinion, whether you're attacking or defending, defense type scenarios are always going to present themselves. So there's always a place for a Junkrat as long as they know what the hell they're doing. And hopefully after watching this video, you will know exactly what the hell it is you're doing. So let's talk about crowd control. That was the other element that I used to tag Junkrat. There are several crowd control type heroes in Overwatch, and I would say that Junkrat is easily one of the best, and that all comes down to his grenade launcher. It's as simple as that. He can flood areas and prevent enemies from flowing through a certain flank. Basically, the idea of area denial. He can shut down doorways and pathways, forcing the enemy to either pass through while taking damage or pass through while dying, or to take a different route altogether. He's really great at controlling the flow of the enemy team, and the match that I'm showing you guys right now is a prime example of that. We won, in my opinion, because of great teamwork, but also because I had some amazing area denial. I kept the grenades flowing. That's something to keep in mind. We'll talk a little bit more about crowd control throughout the length of this guide as we talk about his abilities and so on and so forth. But the first thing that I wanted to help you guys better understand is how the grenades that are fired from his grenade launcher actually work. They're not proximity-based and they're not time-based. They're actually motion-based. What that means is once the grenades come to a standstill, they will then detonate. This is a very basic concept, but you need to understand it in order to put the grenades where you want them and have them detonate roughly when you want them. Think of it like understanding bullet drop in a game like Battlefield 4. Once you wrap your head around the mechanic, you can pretty much hit anyone at any distance. That makes you a very effective sniper. In this case, you want to know how his grenades are going to react to certain firing angles. So if I bounce his grenade off of a high wall, okay, well, it's going to take longer because it now has to hit the ground. It's going to bounce again. It's going to take longer before it becomes stationary. It's sort of a basic lesson in physics and momentum. Think of that bouncy ball you had when you were a kid. You'd bounce it on the ground as hard as you could, and then the second time it hit the ground, it would bounce a little bit lower, and a little bit lower, and a little bit lower until it didn't bounce anymore. It's the same concept with his grenades. You're going to want to use that to your advantage to make sure, again, that you can put the grenades where you want them and have them detonate when you want them. A basic rule of thumb that I used outside of spending a lot of time in the firing range, seeing how the grenades react to different angles, is to fire at low angles when you want the grenades to obviously bounce less, meaning that they'll come to a standstill more quickly, and to fire at high angles when you want them to bounce more. Now, in some instances, having them bounce higher may actually cause them to slow down more quickly based on how far the grenade actually has to fall. You get what I'm saying here. There's a bit of practice that needs to be done. That's really all I can say about it. I can't actually tell you exactly what to do in this situation. You just have to get a feel for it. Just like dealing with bullet drop. That's the best way to understand his grenades and how to be most effective with them. Now, the other element of Junkrat's grenades is that they can actually lodge themselves inside of enemies. You can do this via direct fire, so shooting the grenade at an enemy and having it stick on them, or indirect fire. You can actually bounce it off of a wall and have it stick on that opponent and then detonate. This is a really great tool. It's really great in more close quarters type situations when dealing with larger targets like Reinhardt or Roadhog. It means that you can put several grenades on target and have them detonate very, very quickly. Much more quickly than if you fired them off of a wall and waited for them to detonate after becoming stationary. Definitely something to take into consideration, and this is something you're going to be using in combination with Junkrat's Steel Trap very, very often. So keep that in mind. And I think that this is a good point in time to actually talk about his abilities. So let's start with that steel trap. It's a giant bear trap. There's no other way about it. You can only have one deployed on the battlefield at a time, and it stops everything and just about everyone directly in their path. They can't use their abilities, they can't fire upon you, they can't do a damn thing other than take damage from you and your teammates. This is a very useful tool. It's amazing, again, at shutting down ultimates. You could stop someone like Reaper even. So you got a Reaper. He decides he's going to Death Blossom into an area of the map that he's not even aware of. And he steps in one of your bear traps. Well, that's a done day for him. The same goes for any fast-moving enemy, perhaps an assassin-type character like Genji, or maybe even someone like Tracer, who is just amazingly annoying and awesome at harassing. Lay down a steel trap for her, let her stand in it, fire a couple of grenades directly into her body, and she's going to have a done day. Now, the steel trap actually holds people down long enough that if you were looking at them directly when they stepped in the steel trap, you could fire, I think, up to 3 grenades into their body. That's going to take a lot of the health, possibly all of the health, away from even big targets like Reinhardt and Roadhog. It's pretty much going to mark them for death, which of course is a big bonus. Now, there is one other element of the steel trap that I want to talk about, and that is using it as a motion sensor. I know this is going to sound a bit crazy, but think of the situation where you know you don't need the steel trap directly, and you're leaving a flank exposed. Your team is doing whatever it is they need to do, and they're leaving a flank exposed. You could put that steel trap down in the hopes that an enemy would walk into it. If they did, you'd get an indicator that your trap had been triggered, and that could act as a motion sensor. Now, you can't actually rely on this all of the time, because people can identify the trap, they can shoot it and destroy it, which you don't get a notification of, or they could merely walk around it if they see it. So it's not like a perfect fail-safe, but it still works. And if you decide that you no longer want the trap there, it's not like you have to go pick it up. You can just deploy another one and that one will disappear. So it's something to take into consideration. I've used it in a few situations when dealing with particularly annoying tracers who like to backdoor my team, and it actually ended up being really effective, and it prevented us from dying probably a lot. So take that into consideration. Next up, we have Junkrat's Concussion Mine. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I mean, you get the basics. It's a concussion mine. You throw it on the ground, you can manually detonate it, it can do damage, but it also can push enemies in different directions. And this is really what I want to talk about. Not only does it do damage, but you can use it to control the enemy. Again, it's another crowd control element. Say you've got a rushing Reinhardt. Throw down the concussion mine, detonate it in time, and it can send him flying away from your team. Or maybe you want to send someone like Reaper or Pharah or any target towards your team so your team can more quickly eliminate them. You can do that too. You can knock people off of ledges. There are plenty of maps in Overwatch where there are ledges that will lead to your demise. This is a great opportunity to make use of that concussion mine. Now, the other element of the concussion mine is that it also acts as Junkrat's movement ability, allowing him to propel himself to higher ledges, maybe to propel himself away from enemies out of a firefight when he's low on health, or if you're feeling a little bit crazy, to possibly propel yourself towards a group of enemies. It's an awesome tool, and it just takes a little bit of practice and understanding to wrap your head around how and where you're going to be propelled, or how or where an enemy is going to be propelled, depending on when you detonate it. So again, it's another one of those elements. Practice will make perfect. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about is Junkrat's Rip Tire. It's a pretty straightforward ultimate, right? You got a giant mechanical tire loaded with explosives. You can control it remotely and then detonate it to kill enemies. Here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about when to use the Rip Tire, because I think people get caught up in general with the ultimates in Overwatch and the idea of using them to get as many kills as possible. Now, that can be a sound strategy sometimes. Sometimes it's important to get as many kills as possible. But it's also equally important to go for those HVTs. You could kill 6 people, everyone on the enemy team, and get to play the game with Junkrat's Rip Tire and still lose the match. And the last thing you want to do is have that match be over with and one of your teammates say, man, you know, if only we had been able to deal with that Reinhardt. If only we had been able to deal with that Mercy. She was really crushing them heals. And you're sitting there having wasted 3 Rip Tires trying to get a quad kill, when you could have just focused a single target that could have helped turn the tide of battle. So focus on HVTs. HVTs can be a number of things. They can be a healer, they could be a tank, they could be a turret in the case of somebody like Toblerone. They could be a really annoying Bastion. Consider the situation and use the Rip Tire to eliminate any sort of challenge, any barrier that is holding your team back and preventing them from pushing towards the win. Now, the last thing you need to understand is that the Riptire actually has very low health. It can be taken out very quickly by someone like Hanzo, McCree, Widowmaker, even a Tracer can burst fire and annihilate it in a matter of seconds. If it's destroyed, no boom. Junkrat gets no boom. If you die while remotely controlling the Riptire, you get no boom. So there's two things you need to take into consideration. Am I exposed, and how far away from the enemy am I actually? So you want to be as close as you possibly can to the area in which you plan to detonate your Riptire while also being concealed. That's really what you need to do to understand that Riptire. And again, as I said, guys, focus on those HVTs, please. People are way too caught up in getting quad kills and 6 kills and 3 kills. Man, I can get a triple kill and get played the game. You know what? Sometimes that makes sense. And a lot of those situations happen to be team fights, specifically in game modes like Control, where there's going to be both teams, you know, fighting over an objective at the same time. The Riptire can really turn the tide in a team fight, and you would usually do end up getting a lot of kills, and you also supported your team. That was very much a high-value target situation, except in that instance, the high-value target was everyone on the enemy team, and that's okay. Just remember what I said. That's going to do it for my Junkrat, guys. I hope it really helps you become a better Junkrat player. If you have any questions regarding anything I talked about in this guide that I didn't go into enough detail, or anything you'd just like to ask me, anything you're curious about regarding Junkrat, feel free to throw it down in the comment section below. He's one of the heroes that I played the most in the Overwatch beta. I'm gonna 3 hours I think I have in Junkrat. I know, that's insane, right? A lot of time playing Junkrat. He's one of my favorite heroes in the game, and he's the only hero that I felt comfortable doing a guide for before the game actually came out. I'm well aware the game doesn't come out till May 24th, hopefully 24th. Hopefully you'll be able to study this guide and learn a little bit more about Junkrat before you pick up the game come that day, and you'll be able to start slaying people and helping your team as what I said is amazing defense / crowd control hero inside of Overwatch. Once again, anything else for me, throw it down in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.